Okay, I'm Dan Walker. We're going to talk about treatment for postal history today. Uh, we, uh, we're going to discuss three major aspects of treatment with 5 examples of actual exhibits. We're going to first talk about the title page, which is a very important aspect of the treatment, 20 points of treatment. Then we're going to talk mainly about the middle of the exhibit, the pages of the exhibit, and we're going to very much discuss 3 important techniques for treatment: the section introduction, running headings, and page headings. And finally, one of the last pages, we're just going to have 1 page on the conclusion of the exhibit. The beginning of the exhibit, the middle, which will take up most of the time, and one page on the end of the exhibit. Postal history exhibits vary greatly in organization. Some examples: geography, military, systems. For example, ship, train, UPU, postage due, dead letter office. Postmarks, postal history class 2C. Postal history class 2C is historical, social, and special studies, and we have 1 example of that. And then we also have an example of a hybrid exhibit where the main focus is on rates. You always pick a main focus, but the organization is geography. That's going to be the India exhibit. Among the more traditional classes of exhibits, such as traditional, postal stationery, aerophilately, and revenues, postal history offers the broadest options for creative and innovative exhibits. This is important. This is probably the reason why we see a lot more postal history exhibits today than we did in the past. Defining treatment. There is no real good definition of treatment, but what you want to do with treatment is you want a balanced exhibit. You don't want to have too much material in one section and not enough in another section. You want to have a logical progression, easy to follow, clear, concise write-ups. Any exhibit, including postal history exhibits, need to do 3 things. They need to showcase your material, which is condition and rarity. They need to tell what you know, which is knowledge and personal study. And they need to explain the subject to the reader. This is treatment. Good treatment. A well-treated postal history exhibit will select the primary focus, state that focus, whether it's rates, routes, markings, or routes, or systems. Stay with that focus. You don't want to flip-flop from one focus area, such as rates, to markings. You want to stay with the one, you want to emphasize the main focus. You can come in with other postal, other focuses, but they should be secondary and support the main focus. Treatment issues. Too often, the exhibitor problem is the exhibitor knows the material too well and makes the assumption that everyone knows as much as the exhibitor. To overcome this, you need background or context information is needed. Missing information confuses the readers and the judges alike. Importance of the title page. The title page, you have to state the purpose of the exhibit. The purpose of this exhibit is, I love to see that phrase when you're looking at the title page. The scope, when it started, when it ended, and we'll give a number of examples of scope statements, including just a simple one of dates, but also a number of other examples. The outline, or the plan of the exhibit, the structure of the exhibit. Background or context information. I've added this myself because I think it's very important in a postal history exhibit. And you want references that are available, and if at all possible in English, including personal research references. I have seen references in postal history exhibits that say correspondence with knowledgeable collectors. Well, that's not very helpful to the reader. That doesn't provide any information. Get references that, one or two references that are as good as possible, preferably in English and accessible. You don't want something printed in Gujarati that no one else can read. We're going to talk about 5 specific exhibits, 5 examples. 19th century overseas mail to and from Scotland, which shows the development of an expanded global mail system. Mauritius maritime mail, which uses the mode of transit as its main theme, focus. In defense of the border, a military postal history example from Canada. India used abroad. This is a hybrid exhibit. It's very interesting. It's an exhibit where the focus is on rates, but the organization is by routes. And finally, we're going to talk about a 2C exhibit, the Cunard Line, the ships and the transatlantic mail, 1840 to 1867, the story of a company, Cunard Line. Treatment. Focus. Define which, I don't know why I'm getting an echo, but define which postal history aspect, rates, routes, markings, or systems is the theme of the exhibit. Scope needs to clearly and logically be stated. Subject development needs to match the set scope. And this is very important. Treatment represents 20 points in scoring a postal history exhibit. This 20 points is totally within the control of the exhibitor and represents no cost, 0 cost. The focus. Postal history aspects which are assessed by the judges: rates, routes, markings, and systems. These are the main focus areas that the judges look at. A good exhibit develops one of these aspects as the dominant and unifying factor. It will discuss a secondary aspect when it is appropriate. An exhibit will lose points if the focus flip-flops from one aspect to another. Scope. Any of the following can set the scope of an exhibit or a combination of more than one. I am going to give one example from an exhibit where there's 3 scope exhibits, or good scope exhibits. How well the exhibit sets the starting and ending dates of the exhibit. How well the exhibit sets the starting and ending dates of the exhibit if this is significant. The geographic area of the exhibit needs to be well defined if this is significant. The jurisdiction has to be set: government postal system, private enterprise postal system, or military postal system. System related scopes such as railway or waterway or seaports for transatlantic mail, or specific postal conventions if this is significant. All these are valid ways of defining the scope, the beginning and ending of the exhibit. Also, any social or historical context for 2C exhibits. Here is a good example of scope with 3 examples of the scope in one statement. The Dublin Censor Office, 1939 to 1945, and the Irish Postal Censorship. Here is a not so good example. Official mail and correspondence with exemption rate frankings, a study of official mail and officially reduced postage rates, covers, telegrams, special forms, stamps, cancellations, and official frankings. When does it start? When does it end? What is it? Is it covers? Is it telegraph forms? Is it special forms? Is it stamps? Is it official mail? Is it exemption rates? You don't know. So this is not a good example of a rate study, of scope. Subject development. Section balance. Each section of the exhibit, each chapter of the exhibit should be logically based on the exhibit subject. Size appropriate to the exhibit subject. Sections that have too much or not enough material to properly explain the subject should lose points. Organization and sequence, the plan. The organization reflects the primary focus of the exhibit. If you're talking about rates, you want an organization and sequence that develops the rates. Sequence clearly defined, if not chronological. If you don't do it on a chronological basis, make sure you clearly define how you're going to do, organize and sequence the exhibit. No unexplained gaps. If you're doing postal history of British Guiana from pre-adhesive to the sailing ships, you do not want to leave out the section on the cotton reels. Material selected. Adequate to explain the subject. Few or no redundant examples, including rarities. You don't want to, if you have 3 of the only known examples of a important postal rate, you want to show the best one unless number 2 or number 3 is significant for some other reason. Here is where points will be deducted if important items are not present. First example that we're going to talk about is an exhibit on organized by geographical destination. It's Scotland, 1801 to 1879. Here's the title page. This is a mail to and from Scotland, geographic destination. The focus is development of expanded global mail system. When the beginning and end is from 1801 to 1879. 3 major geographic areas: transatlantic mail, European mail, and African and Eastern mail. The balance is with 6 specific areas, such as British, North America, United States, West Indies. There are the 3 treatment techniques are very important. I'm going to talk a lot about the 3 treatment techniques: section introduction, running headings, and page headings. Section introductions provides the navigational detail for each chapter. You put that at the beginning of a chapter and it creates a visual that a new chapter is starting. Keeps the title page simple. You have a paragraph where information is put throughout the exhibit as each chapter starts, and that keeps the title page, reduces the amount of information you have to put in the title page. Details within section headings are kept off the title page. You can reduce your plan by putting the sections in the section headings. Space for explanations of how and why, not just what you will see. The section introductions, the paragraph that begins a chapter or a section, will give you the space to explain how and why, as well as what you will see. Each time a page from a chapter appears, you want to put the running heading on that page. This running heading defines where you are in your exhibit, where you are in your storyline. Many judges look at the title page, then go look at the last page, and then they go someplace in the middle of the exhibit to figure out where they are in the exhibit. Can they figure out where they are, or do they get confused and lost? The running headings provide that that roadmap to explain your exhibit. Finally, each page should have a page heading. And the page heading states what's on the page. And you do not, unless there's very, very unusual circumstances, you do not repeat the page heading on more than one page. Here we're talking about a section introduction, a paragraph explaining what is what's going to be shown and why and how about the British North America mail, and which is the running heading, and Canada is the page heading. We're talking about the covers from Canada on this page. And I'm going to go and do a number of introductory section introductions, running headings and page headings to emphasize that. Here's another Scotland introduction, geography. West Indies, Roman numeral 3, West Indies, short paragraph, and the running heading is the Roman numeral 3, West Indies. The page heading is Bermuda and Bahamas, and the covers on the page are Bermuda and Bahamas. The second example that we're going to show is Mauritius, and we're going to talk about the mode of transportation or transit. Here's the title page. Mauritius Maritime Mail, the focus, development of Mauritius mail by mode of transit. 1816 to 1933. We start out, the sequence is private ships, ship letters, packet mail, contact steamer service. It ends in 1933 when ships no longer are required to handle the mail. The map at the bottom of the page shows you why where Mauritius is. And notice we're going to talk a lot about the maps. This map has very, very few points of interest. It's a simple map. I don't know if it's hand-drawn. It's probably not hand-drawn, but the routes are hand-drawn on the map. Here is a very interesting and innovative section introduction. The running heading is Roman numeral 3, packet mail, and the page heading is to Great Britain. But notice this, the section heading. It consists of three things. It consists of text at the top. Then you have a table, and then you have a chart. That's a good way of putting a great deal of information about this coming chapter on one page. Another section heading, contracted steamship services at the top of the page. And again, notice that the exhibitor uses a hand-drawn little map to explain the route of this experimental feeder service from Reunion. What happened was we're studying Mauritius, but the mail started at Reunion. Mauritius was just developed, just taken over as a British colony, and the ship from Reunion stopped at Mauritius, picked up the mail on this experimental voyage, and took it to Aden, Suez, and on to Europe. This is just an ordinary page. This is what you'll see in most of the pages in an exhibit will be like this page. The running heading is Roman numeral 4, contracted steamship service. The page heading is to France. It starts off with a nice little table, rate table, and it has two just covers that advance the story and the sort of the nuts and bolts of virtually every postal history exhibit. The third example is military postal history using Canada. Here's the title page. Military postal history organized by military events in 4 military significant time periods of Canada history. Canadian military mail, Canadian development largely influenced by its military actions. The time frame is 1628 to 1885, a long time frame, but the exhibitor does balance his material. You don't need to say where Canada is or quote where Canada is because it's pretty well known. It's a chronological presentation, which is to understand. At the bottom of the page, here are 21 philatelic highlights in the exhibit. That's great if you're a Canadian postal history collector or particularly a military postal history collector. But if I was to do this, I think I would use this space to give more context and background information about Canadian military mail. Here is an ordinary page. The running heading is Struggles for Existence 1761 to 1815, one of the 4 periods that the exhibitor is set up as sections or chapters. The page heading is War of 1812, Prelude to War. The paragraph on the War of 1812 is not a section introduction. It's just a paragraph telling about the War of 1812 and Canada's influence in it. Here we have another ordinary page. The running heading is towards a permanent force, 1866 to 1885. The page heading is Riel Rebellion. The background information paragraph is again not a section introduction, but is background information on the Riel Rebellion. And the map again is not detailed. It mainly shows the routes that are important about this section of the this Riel Rebellion. And it's a good ordinary page that the type of page you see a lot in an exhibit. The fourth exhibit is a hybrid exhibit. And by hybrid, we say it's a hybrid exhibit because the focus is on rates, but the organization is by routes. This is the title page. This is an interesting title page. It shows that it's Victorian outgoing Indian mail. The period is clearly stated 1854 to 1879. The sequence, 2 main sections of mail going west, which is by far the highest volume, and going east. Normally, you would expect the exhibit to be going west from India and going east from India, but the that would really mess up the balance because there's much more going west from India than going east from India. So the exhibitor has innovated. And what does he say? The balance defined creatively. The going west is west of Suez. That's what he says in his detailed plan here, west of Suez. And going east is east of Alexandria, Virginia. And what does that do? It gives him room to put in Egypt on the east side, Turkey and Europe, Aden, Mauritius, Reunion, Cape of Good Hope, as well as Hong Kong and China, Strait settlements, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, and even the rare cover going from India east through San Francisco often, or Vancouver, British Columbia, to the United States. Another aspect of this title page is in the write-up on the right here, is that up until 1st of September 1867, Singapore and Penang were part of the Bengal presidency, part of the postal system from Bengal, which is the area where Calcutta is. And that is included in the exhibit because it was part of the India postal system. After September 1st, 1867, it is mail going east. Okay, we have section headings, running headings, and page headings. Section headings, the section heading is a rate study organized by routes. The section introduced is explained by use of text and a hand-drawn map, but only the details that advance the storyline are shown on the map. This exhibitor uses both the text and a map to write his section introductions. The running heading is 6 anna rate for a 1/4 ounce piece of mail. It's going to be part of every page in this chapter or section. The page heading is to Italy via Brindisi on Italian packets, and that's unique for this this page. Why double pages? The double pages allow long covers like the one in the upper left to be displayed horizontally rather than slanted or vertically. Many viewers and judges don't like to see vertical or slanted covers. More material and write-up can be fit on a double page. The presentation is much more pleasing. Double page and section heading. Here we have a double page and section heading where the running heading is Roman numeral 1C via Trieste. The section introductions is with text and hand-drawn map on the left side of the page, which is a normal place where you would expect a section introduction. Note the highlighted cover in the upper right with a red border and a small yellow border around it, with the rarity statement in red. The item stands out without using a lot of white space or distractions. I'm probably one of the reasons why the exhibitor finally ended up doing this is that when I've judged this exhibit in America a number of times, it was hard to pick out his rarer items, his rarer postal history items. So this is the method he devised to to highlight his rare items, which I think is a good presentation technique. Now we have section introduction starts at the right. Flexible. The double pages provide flexibility. You can have section introductions on the right side as well as the left side on a double page. Probably could have it on the bottom of the right side if you really got stuck, but it's much better to have it on the top. Retains running and page headings like 2 single pages. So you're basically looking at almost 2 single pages, but you're getting a lot more information on the page. Avoid monotonous layout. What we have here is 5 covers, a section introduction, a map on a double page. A great deal of material. It's still flexible, avoids the railroad track, monotonous appearance that we comment on as judges in some exhibits. It's a good exhibit technique. Double pages really help in this instance. The 5th example, the final example, is the Cunard line. It's a 2C exhibit, historical and social study. We're going to show a number of pages, examples with ephemera. We've picked out the ephemera just to emphasize the use of ephemera in this case. Here's the title page. The exhibit starts in 1840 and ends in 1876. These are the years that Cunard had a monopoly on carrying mail from England to North America. It's transatlantic mail between Europe and North America. It's organized by postal acts and treaties. The balance, the purpose and scope document the Cunard effort to keep the steam vessels on schedule. This is in relation to the prior to this, the technology were sailing vessels, and you greatly had to depend upon the wind direction and the wind force to get your sailing vessels going, and the schedules were very, very unreliable. The ephemera is at the title page. He's showing a colored sketch of His Majesty's ship Britannia, an image of the first steamship operated by Cunard, and this is at the destination of the first voyage, where the ship is locked in ice in the Boston harbor. Here is the second page of the exhibit, the Inaugural Voyage. The top cover shows a forerunner. This is a sailing ship that took 30 days from London to Canada with a complex British-Canadian rate. The lower cover is the first Cunard sailing Liverpool to Boston, 15 days by steamship with a less complex rate. Here's the first ephemera page. A newspaper report. A newspaper is dated 27 July 1840, and, which is the actual date that the ship, the first voyage, came into Boston, and the exhibitor overlays the ephemera, the map, the newspaper, with excerpts from the newspaper that you can actually read as a viewer or a judge. In the lower right-hand corner, there is a small image of a commemorative cup presented to Cunard in Boston on 27 July 1840, the day he arrived. And now that cup is on display in the Queen Mary II. This is showing the flexibility you have with a 2C exhibit, and including ephemera. Here's another ephemera page. This is a bill of lading. It's an interesting bill of lading. The bill of lading is for 1 box of gold, dated 6 January 1856. The one box was worth $20,000 in 1856, and the freight rate was $75. The running heading is above the line. The running heading is two sections. General cargo and Cunard Line did not only carry mail and passengers. The page heading, original bill of lading, 6 January 1856 for one box of gold worth $20,000. This is, again, an innovative way of getting your running headings and your page headings on the page. There is social aspects. There is a period line drawing of the master of the ship Persia, who was named on the bill of lading. So he uses the two ephemera items on this page to develop his postal history story. The box of gold, just out of interest, was on its way to J.P. Morgan in New York. Here is another ephemera page. It's an advertising flyer from July 1857 that was sent to prospective customers with schedules, special freight requirements, passenger rates, and services. And the exhibitor on the left pulls out some interesting information to describe the what was in the flyer. Here is a page where the exhibitor uses maps to explain his exhibit. This is an exhibit of interrupted mail. Above the line, he's taking US-UK Treaty of 1849 to 1867, and he fades it. It's not in bold text. And then also, as part of the running heading, is interrupted mail 1851 and 1863. Below the line, he is giving the page heading, which is the Africa ran aground, and then a second ship disabled off Cape Race. And he uses, again, small, non-cluttered, hand-drawn maps with just the important information about the disrupted voyages of these ships. Here, the use of postal marking scans. Running heading above the line, US-UK Treaty of 1849 to 1867. Again, it's faded. But also the cross-border mail, Canada, 1849 and 1857. That is not faded. The back stamps of the page heading below the line says carried on Cunard vessels between Canada and US. What happened was that the Cunard vessels would go from England to Nova Scotia and then down to Boston and New York, and then come back from New York to Boston to Nova Scotia on to England. And the US and Canada allowed mail to be traveled between Canada and the US on this voyage. So the exhibitor has picked two covers to describe this, one going from Nova Scotia, from New York to Nova Scotia, and one going from New York to Nova Scotia. And subtly, he says each of the two covers have the first stamp of the US and the first stamp of Nova Scotia. It doesn't say that they're rare covers or anything about the stamps to convey a rarity, but the message is probably there to the judges and the viewers. It's two nice covers to describe his the cross-border mail. Conclusion page. This is the only time we're going to talk about conclusion page, because the conclusion page is heavily dependent upon, is basically dependent upon what storyline you're telling. This is the page with the end of the monopoly as the running heading. And the page heading says Cunard last sailings, final westbound voyage of the Cuba to Boston, and the final westbound voyage of the Persia to New York. This ended a Cunard 27-year monopoly on British mail to North America. Cunard continued to compete, but it was no longer a monopoly. So this is a excellent, the last voyages is an excellent way of concluding the exhibit. It's special aspects that dictate the ending in virtually every case. Going to go over the treatment seminar. Page title, you want to state the purpose, define the scope, outline, which is the plan of the exhibit, background information, and references, including personal research. You want to set the primary focus, rates, routes, markings, or systems. State that focus in the exhibit and stay with that focus. Do not flip-flop. 3 important things about most of the pages in the exhibit. You want to have a section introduction on each section or chapter of the exhibit. You want to have the running heading repeated on each page of that section heading or section or chapter. And you want to have unique page heading on each of the pages of the exhibit, telling what's on the page. You want to use maps that are mainly hand-drawn or and simple, with only the points of interest shown. And you want to end the exhibit with a conclusion page, which is logical to the exhibit. I want to thank the 5 exhibitors who helped us with examples. Kathy Johnson did the Scotland and the Mauritius. David Hobden did the Canadian military mail. Paul Allen did the India used abroad, and Eagle Tornston did the Cunard line. Thank you very much, and that's the end of my talk. I'll be happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Dan. It's wonderful to hear what you've told us about the importance of treatment. And now it is question time. I've got a few questions from, okay, we start off with Eric Shearer. He would like to ask, I'll just repeat the question that he wrote. Why do you think I should not repeat the section heading on each page related to the section? He thinks that it helps the spectator to get a good overview.
Sorry, I'm sorry if I gave that impression. You should, you should put the running heading, which is basically the section, the section heading, section introduction title on every page. By running heading, I mean the section introduction title. They're both synonymous. So yes, you should do that. You should have the running heading or the section introduction title on every page. You have the page heading unique on every page. So I'm sorry that I didn't explain that better, but thank you for the question. That's an excellent question.
Okay. The second question also comes from Eric. He says, when do you talk about redundancies? I have an exhibit on the rules and usage of reply cards. One rule is about the payment for registration. I show 3 cards according to the rules and 2 not according to the rules. Is that redundancy?
if the 3 that are on the rules and the 2 that are not on the rules show different aspects, that is not redundancy. It sounds like it is not redundancy. My suspicion is it would not be redundant.
Okay. Eric's asked another question. Which items to highlight on rarity? I have highly rare items which are not particularly rarities in the context of the topic of the exhibit or the chapter. So how should I highlight those? For example, I show a reply card uprated for registration. Section is on this topic. The card is the only known overprint card from the Anglo-French occupation in Togo ever used back. But this fact does not refer to the topic of the exhibit.
You should not treat that as a special item. It's okay to, in the write-up of that cover, to talk about why it's special, but do not highlight it because it's not the main focus of the exhibit. Only highlight the rare items where you're talking about the main focus of the exhibit, and downplay. It's okay to explain it, but do it in the section, the write-up that you're talking about the cover.
Right. This one is from Ari Mohanan. The exhibitor should be punished twice. Same mistake. Can you elaborate this aspect on treatment versus knowledge, rarity, and presentation?
Okay.
Yeah, he says.
I think that presentation and treatment are very closely related. I actually view them as sort of 25 points that work together. And I think that was a point that Chris King in his talk seemed to imply. What was the third postal? There was treatment and post and presentation. What was the third one? Andrew?
Treatment versus knowledge, rarity, and presentation.
Okay, knowledge and rarity are just are things that you have a great deal of rarity is a dollar and cents thing often. So it is much better explained by Henrik's original talk, and the knowledge and personal study will be the description of the cover, and it will be discussed in, I think, the fourth presentation.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I understand the question, but basically you want to talk about 3 things: what you have, what you know, and how well you explain it. And what you have is the rarity and condition. What you know, what you know about the thing is knowledge and personal study, and what you say about it is treatment. Those are the 3 important things about any exhibit, including postal history exhibits. And when I talk about, when I say treatment, I would also probably put a presentation as a sort of a side thing. That treatment and presentation sort of go together, in my opinion.
Okay. Question comes from Andrea Mori from Italy. He says, there is a kind of collection that Italian collectors of more modern material, say post 1918, seems to like a lot, which is the study of a series of stamps from the point of view of postal history. This seems actually very borderline between postal history and traditional, and easy to cross over if not treated properly. What do you think would be the best way to treat such a subject so that it may best adhere to postal history as a postal history exhibit?
Yeah, it gets particularly if you put the stamps in the exhibit as unused stamps, unless you have something special, such as tagging that's talking about the things on the stamps that might mechanize the mail. We had a sixth example for our presentation of treatment, where we had a modern Machen head exhibit that treated, that talked about the stamps, and there was a number of slides with stamps. I didn't have enough time to talk about that, but you have to be very careful that you take you use the stamps not as a sort of a focus on the stamps, but on a focus of some postal history aspect, such as the mechanization that was used to treat these stamps. If you, I think from the sound of I'm not familiar with that type of exhibit, but from the sound of it, it probably, for the time being at least, would get more points with a traditional exhibit. Although we're in the postal history in particular is a changing subject, and who knows what's going to happen down the road.
Okay, thank you, Dan. The next question comes from Jane Sodaro. She said, how much space should references take up on a title page, given that in normal circumstances, judges and viewers will not access to references on the show floor?
Interesting question. The new guidelines specifically say that you should have references on your title page. I think they should take very, very little space. In fact, most of the examples that I used, the title pages, I didn't mention this, but most of the title pages that I showed did not have references. I'm not sure any of the pages had references, and they all achieved good awards. So the answer is minimize the references to the best you can, and I like to keep it down to one reference that is available, preferably in English. And if you did an article yourself that is the best article for your subject, put that in. In America, most of the time you see the references in the synopsis page. That's still not the way that they do it at FIP. So put the references there, try and minimize as much as possible.
Okay, the next question comes from Rex Dixon. He said, how would you modify what you have been saying for one frame exhibit?
I think the one frame exhibit, the main thing that you have to concentrate on is getting a subject that really fits on 16 normal pages. And you have to develop that subject in a very short time with a very limited amount of material that is not a part of a much larger exhibit subject. I think the techniques, some of the major techniques, such as what you put on the title page, the purpose of the exhibit, the scope of the exhibit, the plan of the exhibit, the background information, and maybe the reference, one or two references is important, but also you could still have section headings in a one frame exhibit, and the running headings and the page headings, get those in. And if you have maps, have the maps be relatively small, because you're dealing with a small amount of space. So I think the subjects that we talked about still pertain to a one-frame exhibit, but you just have to have a very limited subject and use your space very effectively.
Okay. The next question comes from Rajesh Panani. He says, in an exhibit of large covers, for example, parcel post, are large covers accepted? Do you need to be specifically mentioned in the title page, even though it is obvious?
No, you don't need to specifically mention in the title page. And I love large covers because large covers are not of interest to many postal historians, and I love them because they show so much about the exhibit. So continue, use large covers. Double pages are wonderful for showing large covers, and I think it's you don't need to mention it in the thing because it's obvious that the covers are large. Don't try and put large covers on single pages though, because that just wastes a lot of space, and you try not to have covers that are overlapping on one page or vertical rather than horizontal.
Okay. The next question is again from Ari. And he said, I would like to hear your opinion on what is the difference between Class 2C and open class.
If it doesn't fit in Class 2C, it's open class, I guess is my opinion.
Open class doesn't have to be postal history.
It doesn't have to be postal history either. So 2C is historical, social, and special studies, and it's postal history. Open class can be anything, it can be a lot of things, and I'm not sure there's a set definition at this time, but if it's postal history, you have a good shot at getting it as part of 2C if it discusses historical, social, or a special study.
Good, right. Any more questions? Yes, oh, yes. Yes, there's a question from Hugh Amore. What is the limit on ephemera in a 2C exhibit?
There is no limit. You as the exhibitor make a decision. There is no percentages. If you've heard of percentages in the past, just disregard that. It's just you make up your decision. You make up your mind what is good to advance your exhibit. You still want the philatelic aspects to dominate. I showed a lot of, in the final canard line, I showed a lot of ephemera, much higher percentage than would of ephemera versus non-ephemera pages than would appear in an actual exhibit. So there is no definitive answer, and I hope they'll never come up with a definitive answer. Let the exhibitor make his own decisions.
Okay. Next question comes from Nadia Said. How many rare covers allowed with red borders in each frame?
I think that you have to really be very careful about that. If I see more than 3 or 4 in a frame, I begin to wonder whether what happens is if you have a lot of if you're showing a lot of highlighted rare covers, you sort of reduce the importance of the covers. So at most, I would say 3 or 4, possibly 5 in some frames. But if you have every frame 3 or 4 covers or 5 covers, I think you're probably overdoing it. So again, use your best judgment. Remember that the more highlighted covers you put in, the less significant a highlighted cover is.
Yes, the next question comes from Howard Wunderlich. He says, how would you deal with an item that is larger than a double page in both directions?
I've seen people with revenue exhibits have stiff pages that cover four frames, a square box of 4 frames. I've seen people that instruct the person putting up an exhibit in a international show that has that expands more than one on one cover or one page or one double page, where they have it folded over and they reduce, they leave room on either side or the top and bottom to show the other parts of the cover. It becomes very difficult particularly in a FIP postal history exhibit, to show something that is more than fits on a double page. You just have to be very careful. Try and get a page that takes up enough room that you can show it properly, if it's really that important. And if it's not really that important, the process of getting it to the show, making sure it's safe and not damaged, are all considerations that you have to go through in when you have something very large. I wouldn't recommend that you just photograph the thing, or I don't recommend that you fold it. You either have to make a decision whether it's so important that you have to put it in and you have to do something extremely special, or you just leave it out.
Right. Next question comes from Abdullah Khoury. He says, did you mean avoid vertical exhibit covers and has to be horizontal? I mean, I don't put all the covers vertically. Everything has to be horizontal.
You don't, we're talking about guidelines. You can have covers vertically, but what I'm saying is it's very difficult for the viewer and the judges to assess the covers that are vertical. And if at all possible, you should have the covers horizontal and not vertical or not slanted. I've seen exhibits with vertical covers. Now, if you're dealing with China, early China covers, and the address is vertical characters, and it doesn't flop off the one end of the page or the other end of the page. Yes, you can have the vertical covers if that's the way the cover was made, but most of the time you want to have horizontal, the cover horizontally, if that's the way the cover was originally made up by the person sending the cover. If it's a Chinese cover that is vertical originally and it fits on a page without overlapping onto another page, that's fine to have it vertical, but most of the time you want to have things horizontal.
Okay, the next question comes from Mohana Chandran Nir. He says, is it necessary to list out the important materials in the title page? No,
it is not. When I talked about the Canadian postal history, my personal opinion is that you should not list your important items on the title page. It doesn't do any good. When the exhibitor or the judge is into the exhibit, you want to have a way of drawing that person's attention to the important covers, clearly state why it's important, and not just say a unique cover. You have to tell why the cover is unique. but you don't put it on the title page. In my opinion, that's a waste of space on the title page. So I would not do that. I would not put any of the important covers on the title, reference the important covers on the title page. I would reference them in the exhibit and make sure they stand out so that the judges and viewers can see them.
Okay, next questions come from Nadia Zeb. He says, under the postal history class, if the cover bears a unique stamp, is it allowed to explain the rarity of the stamp on the page?
Well,
Should you,
as Andrew mentioned, you can under the new guidelines, you can do it on a very, you don't want to highlight the thing. You want to do it on a maybe a separate sentence or two, but be careful about doing it too often. You're dealing with postal history. The traditional exhibit, the whole focus is on the stamp, and you don't want to get the judges thinking that maybe you have a traditional exhibit rather than a postal history exhibit. So the answer is yes, it's becoming more common to do it, but do it separately and away from the postal history aspects of the cover, and do not be flashy about it when you're talking about it. Just give some basic information.
Okay, next question comes from Thomas. Regarding non-philatelic treatment in class 2C, what are the things that should be in focus?
The things that should be in focus are basically the same things that are in focus in the normal postal history exhibit. You want to focus on rates, routes, markings, or a system, and choose one of those focuses and stick with it, both in 2C and in normal postal history exhibits.
Okay, right. The next question comes from Ronald Watson. He said, I was advised to have my important items at eye level. How can one do this if the covers do not fit the chronological order of the display?
I have no idea how you do that. I try and get my covers. If you're doing single page postal history exhibits, page number 7 is the most important. Page number 6 is very important. I try and get them at that location, as long as my storyline is still, I'm not messing up my storyline. But if you can't do it, what you have to do is you have to put your important covers. If you have the important cover down at the bottom of the page, bottom of the frame, you have to make sure that it's highlighted so that the judges can know that it's an important item. And if you have to do that, and you have a lot of important covers, if you have a really major important cover in a frame, plus other less important covers that you also want to highlight, just consider highlighting the more important cover that might be at the bottom of frame, in frame, what was it, 13, 14, 15, 6, 13, 14, 15, and 16. Just maybe you don't particularly highlight the other important covers in that frame, and you just highlight the important cover that you've had to put down at the bottom of the frame to maintain your storyline.
Okay, the next question comes from Nada Sad. In the references, can we use auction houses catalogs, especially when they said only 1 or 2 recorded?
No, I would not use auction houses comments to highlight references. If I think what the reference is, the purpose of the reference is the philatelic knowledge that the reference relates, not the rarity of the item. The rarity of the item you have to develop yourself. You don't want to view the rarity that's presented in a philatelic auction as one of your references. You want to have books and articles, scholarly articles that talk about the postal history subject that you're talking about, not the auction catalog. So don't use auction catalogs as references on the title page. That's my advice.
Right, from the same person, he says, is it acceptable to mix double page and single page in the exhibit or in the same frame?
Yes, very much so.
Right, okay. So, any more questions from the floor? Right, okay.
You will.
Right.
You recorded my my talk, and it will be on the FIP Postal History, website. So, and again, if anyone has questions, my email is well known with that throughout the world. So send me an email.
Yes. Okay. Thanks. If there are no more questions, I'd like to close the meeting by thanking Dan, for giving us just a wonderful talk and on treatment, which is obviously one of the very, very important criteria in judging, and whether you make or break your exhibit. And then, of course, I've got to thank the FIP for hosting the show, and then of course Kelly and Dr. Prakop for bearing with us, yes, stay tuned for our next meeting, which is on importance by Henrik, which will be on 4th of October at an earlier time of, it's 2 p.m. German time, or 8 p.m. I think in the Asian time. Okay, Dan, you've got something to say?
Nope. I just thank everyone for listening, and it was my pleasure to speak before you. Hope you learned something.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. Yes, thank you, Dan, and thank you everybody for listening, and stay tuned until the next meeting. Okay. Good night.
Bye now.
Or good